The alarm screamed through the metal walls of Station Omega. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Captain Park Ji-yeon stood at the command center, her hands gripping the rail as she stared at the view screen. Her heart was calm, but her mind was racing. 40 warships. The Dominion had sent 40 warships. Station Omega was humanity's furthest outpost. It floated at the edge of the Andromeda Corridor, a space highway that connected two arms of the galaxy. Whoever controlled this station controlled the path to Earth. Ji-yeon had known for years that the Dominion would come for it. She had just hoped it would not be today. Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho rushed to her side. He was breathing hard, his uniform covered in dust from the lower decks. "Captain, we have confirmed visual. 40 Dominion cruisers. They are holding position at the edge of our sensor range." Ji-yeon nodded slowly. "How long until they reach weapon range?" 20 minutes. Maybe less. She turned to face her crew. The command center held 30 officers, all of them looking at her with fear in their eyes. They were good people. Brave people. But they were not soldiers. Station Omega was a research and trade post. They had one defense platform, 12 small fighter ships, and 200 crew members. Against 40 Dominion warships, they had no chance. "Begin evacuation," Ji-yeon said. Her voice was steady. "All civilians to the escape pods. Children first. Families second. Non-essential crew third." Ensign Choi Yuna, a young woman barely 22 years old, turned from her console. "Captain, the escape pods can only hold 150 people. We have 200 on board." "I know." Ji-yeon met her eyes. "Essential crew stays. We need to buy time for the pods to reach safe distance." Tae-ho grabbed her arm. "Ji-yeon, you should go with them." She pulled her arm free gently. "Someone has to command the defense. Someone has to make sure those pods get away. Then let me stay. You are more valuable than—" "No." Her voice was firm but kind. "Your wife is pregnant. Your child will need a father. Go to the pods." Tae-ho's jaw tightened. She could see the war inside him. Duty against love. Honor against survival. Finally, he shook his head. "I will not leave you to die alone." Ji-yeon smiled sadly. "Then we die together, old friend." The next 20 minutes were chaos. Ji-yeon watched the escape pods launch one by one, small lights shooting away from the station toward the distant human colony. She counted them. 12 pods. 144 people. Safe, at least for now. The Dominion fleet began to move. Their ships were massive, black triangles that blocked out the stars. The Dominion had conquered 600 species across the galaxy. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They simply absorbed. Every world they touched became part of their empire. Every species they met became their slaves. Humanity had been fighting them for 15 years. They had won some battles. They had lost more. But they had never surrendered. Not once. Ji-yeon intended to keep that record. "All fighters launch," she ordered. "Target their lead ships. Do not try to destroy them. Just slow them down." 12 small fighters flew out to meet the enemy. Ji-yeon watched them on the view screen, tiny dots of light against the ocean of darkness. They were brave. So very brave. The first fighter exploded in a flash of orange flame. Then the second. Then the third. In less than 5 minutes, all 12 fighters were gone. Ji-yeon closed her eyes for a moment. 12 pilots. 12 families who would never see their loved ones again. She would carry their names in her heart forever. "Captain." Yuna's voice was shaking. "We are receiving a transmission. Put it through." The view screen flickered. A face appeared. It was gray-skinned, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. The creature was tall, wearing black armor decorated with gold symbols. Ji-yeon recognized those symbols. They marked him as a commander, one of the highest ranks in the Dominion military. "I am Commander Valk," the creature said. His voice was deep, like stones grinding together. "You will surrender your station within 1 hour. If you do not, I will destroy it and everyone inside." Ji-yeon stood straight. "And if we surrender, what happens to my crew?" Valk's 4 eyes blinked slowly. "They will be processed, assigned to work camps according to their skills. Those who are useful will live. Those who are not—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. "I need time to consider," Ji-yeon said. "You have 1 hour. Not 1 second more." The screen went black. Taeho moved closer. "We cannot surrender. You know what they do to prisoners." "I know." Ji-yeon stared at the dark screen. "But if we fight, everyone dies. At least with surrender, some might survive. Survive as slaves. Survival is survival." She turned to face him. "I have not decided anything yet. I just need time to think." She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the escape pods were flying towards safety. Somewhere out there, children were sleeping, not knowing how close they had come to death. She had saved them. That was something. But 56 people remained on the station. 56 people who trusted her to make the right choice. The hour passed too quickly. When the Dominion fleet began to move again, Ji knew her time was up. She watched the massive flagship approach the station, its docking clamps extending like the claws of a hungry beast. "They are boarding," Yuna reported. "Tell everyone to stand down," Ji-yeon said. "No one fires. No one resists. I will not have more blood on my hands." The Dominion soldiers came through the airlocks like a flood. They were tall and gray, their armor making them look like walking statues. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Ji-yeon's crew raised their hands in surrender. Within minutes, it was over. Ji-yeon was grabbed by 2 soldiers and dragged through the corridors of her own station. She saw her crew being pushed to their knees, their hands bound behind their backs. She saw Taeho with blood running down his face from a wound on his forehead. She saw Yuna crying silently. They brought her to the command center. Commander Valk was waiting. He was even more terrifying in person. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, his 4 eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He looked at Ji-yeon like she was an insect, something small and unimportant. "Captain Park Ji-yeon," he said. "I have heard of you. You led the defense of Colony 7. You destroyed 3 of our ships at the Battle of Red Nebula." "4 ships," Ji-yeon corrected. "One of them crashed later." Valk made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You have spirit. I almost admire that." He reached into his armor and pulled out a document. He placed it on the console in front of her. Ji-yeon looked down at it. It was a formal surrender agreement, written in both human and Dominion languages. By signing it, she would give the Dominion control of Station Omega and access to the Andromeda Corridor, a direct path to Earth. Valk reached into his armor again. This time, he pulled out a pen. It was silver and elegant, clearly very old. A trophy from some conquered world. He held it out to her. "Sign," he said. "And your crew lives." Ji-yeon looked at the pen. Such a small thing. Such a simple thing. Just a tool for writing. But as she reached for it, a thought formed in her mind. A memory of her grandmother's voice from long ago. A weapon is only a weapon if you know how to use it. She took the pen. Ji-yeon held the pen in her hand. It was heavier than she expected. The silver metal was cold against her fingers. She could feel strange carvings on its surface, symbols from a language she did not know. This pen had belonged to someone once. Someone who had probably faced the same choice she was facing now. Commander Vok watched her with his 4 glowing eyes. "Your species intrigues me," he said slowly. "You fight even when victory is impossible. You resist even when resistance means death. It is illogical. It is inefficient." Ji Yeon did not look up from the pen. "We call it hope. Hope." Vok spoke the word like it was something dirty. "Hope is a disease. It makes you suffer longer. It makes you believe in futures that will never come. The species we have conquered all had hope once. Now they work in our mines and factories. Their hope died with their freedom." Ji Yeon finally raised her eyes to meet his. "And yet you keep conquering. If hope is so useless, why do you fear it so much?" For a moment, Vok's eyes flickered with something. Anger, maybe. Or surprise. No one had spoken to him like this in a very long time. "I do not fear hope," he said. "I simply find it amusing. Like watching a small animal struggle before it dies." Ji Yeon said nothing. She let her eyes move around the room, taking in every detail. 20 Dominion soldiers stood guard, their weapons ready. They were positioned in a circle around the command center, covering every exit. Near the door, Taeho knelt on the floor with his hands tied behind his back. Blood still dripped from the wound on his forehead. 3 other officers knelt beside him. Yuna, Corporal Baek Dongwoo, and a young pilot named Han So-Ra. 4 of her people. That was all that remained in this room. The rest had been taken somewhere else on the station. She looked back at Vok. "If I refuse to sign, what then?" Vok stepped closer. He was so tall that Ji Yeon had to crane her neck to see his face. "Then I destroy this station. I kill everyone on it. And I take the corridor anyway. Your signature does not give me anything I cannot take by force. It simply determines whether your crew dies today or lives as servants of the Dominion." "Servants," Ji Yeon repeated. "You mean slaves. I mean whatever I choose to mean." Vok's voice was cold. "You have no power here, Captain. You have no choices. The only question is how much suffering you wish to cause before you accept the truth." Ji Yeon looked down at the document. The words blurred before her eyes. She thought about Earth. She thought about the 8 billion people who lived there, going about their daily lives, not knowing that their fate rested on her decision. If she signed, the Dominion would have a clear path to humanity's home. If she refused, she and her crew would die, but the Dominion would still take the corridor. Either way, humanity lost. But there was a third option, one that Vok had not considered, one that required something no Dominion commander would ever expect from a defeated enemy. Courage. G-Y-E-O-N had studied the Dominion for years. She knew their anatomy, their culture, their weaknesses. She knew that their 4 eyes were not just for seeing. Each eye was connected to a different part of their brain. The 2 large eyes in the center handled vision. The 2 smaller eyes on the sides handled neural communication, allowing Dominion commanders to control their ships and soldiers through thought alone. If she could damage those neural eyes, Vok would lose his connection to the fleet. Just for a few moments. But sometimes, a few moments was all you needed. She looked at the pen in her hand. It was pointed at the tip. Sharp enough to write. Sharp enough to stab. But could she do it? Could she move fast enough? The soldiers would shoot her the moment she attacked. She would die. But if she could take Vok down with her, if she could buy her crew even a small chance of escape, she thought about Taeho and his pregnant wife. She thought about Yuna, so young, so full of potential. She thought about all the people she had already lost today. The 12 pilots. The crew members who had stayed to fight. They had given their lives for a few extra minutes. Could she do any less? Ji-Yan took a deep breath. She bent over the document, pretending to read it one more time. Her heart was beating fast now, but she kept her face calm. She had learned long ago how to hide her feelings. A good captain never showed fear. "I have one condition," she said. Valk tilted his head. "You are not in a position to make conditions. Hear me out." Ji-Yan straightened up, still holding the pen. "I will sign, but I want your word that my crew will not be separated. I want them to stay together, wherever you send them." Valk studied her for a long moment. Then he made that grinding sound again, the one that might have been a laugh. "You care for them that much? These weak creatures who could not even defend their own station?" "They are my family," Ji-Yan said simply. "In everything but blood." Something changed in Valk's eyes. Not quite respect, but something close to it. "Very well. I give you my word. They will remain together. Now sign." Ji-Yan nodded. She stepped closer to the console where the document lay. She could feel Valk watching her every movement. She could feel the soldiers' weapons pointed at her back. Her hand was steady as she brought the pen down to the paper. She wrote the first letter of her name. Then she moved. Her body twisted. Her arm shot up. The pen flew toward Valk's face, aimed not at his central eyes, but at the smaller eye on his upper left side. The neural eye. The weak point dot. The pen sank deep. Valk screamed. It was a terrible sound, high and sharp, full of pain and shock. He stumbled backward, his hands reaching for his face. Blue blood poured from the wound, running down his gray skin like dark rivers. The soldiers froze. For one precious second, they did not know what to do. Their commander was screaming. Their perfect control was broken. Ji-Yan did not waste that second. She grabbed the weapon from the nearest soldier's hands. He was too stunned to stop her. She fired twice, and 2 soldiers fell. Then she dove behind the console as the others opened fire. Energy blasts tore through the air above her head. Metal screamed as it melted. But Ji-Yan was already moving, crawling toward Taeho and the others. Tae-Ho had not been idle. The moment Ji-Yan attacked, he had thrown himself at the soldier guarding him. His hands were tied, but his legs were free. He kicked the soldier's knees out from under him, and then stomped on his head when he fell. Dongwu grabbed the fallen soldier's weapon and started firing. Sora did the same. Yuna ran for the main console, her fingers flying over the controls. The blast doors slammed shut with a heavy boom. Suddenly, the room was quiet. 8 Dominion soldiers lay dead on the floor. 6 more stood against the far wall, their weapons raised, but their eyes uncertain. And in the center of it all, Valk writhed on the ground, the silver pen still sticking out of his eye. Ji-Yan stood up slowly. She was breathing hard. Her uniform was torn and burned in several places. But she was alive. "Captain." Yuna's voice was shaking but proud. "I have locked down the command center. Reinforcements cannot reach us. How long do we have?" "A few minutes. They will cut through the doors eventually." Ji-Yan nodded. She walked over to Valk and looked down at him. He was still alive, still conscious. His 3 remaining eyes glared at her with pure hatred. "You will die for this," he hissed. "You and everyone you love." Ji-Yan knelt beside him. She grabbed the pen and twisted it slightly. Valk screamed again. "Maybe," she said quietly, "but not today." She stood up and turned to face her crew. 4 people against an army. It was impossible odds. But they had done the impossible once already. "Listen carefully," she said. "We do not have much time, but I have a plan." The command center smelled of burned metal and blood. Ji-Yan stood in the middle of it all, her mind working faster than it ever had before. She had 4 crew members, 6 enemy soldiers still standing against the wall, and a wounded Dominion commander on the floor. Outside the blast doors, she could hear the sound of more soldiers trying to cut through. They had minutes. Maybe less. "Tao," she said sharply. "Secure the remaining soldiers. Take their weapons and tie them up." Taeho nodded. He moved quickly, his military training taking over. Dongwu helped him while Sora kept her weapon pointed at the prisoners. The 6 Dominion soldiers did not resist. With their commander down, they seemed lost. The Dominion operated on strict hierarchy. Without Vought giving orders, they did not know what to do. G-YEON walked to the main console where Yuna was working. "Status report. The blast doors will hold for about 10 more minutes," Yuna said. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "They are using cutting torches. Once they break through, we will be overwhelmed." "What about external communications?" "Blocked. The Dominion fleet is jamming all signals. We cannot call for help." Ji-Yeon had expected that. She leaned over the console and pulled up the station schematic on the view screen. Station Omega was shaped like a wheel, with the command center at the hub and various sections spreading out like spokes. Docking bays, living quarters, research labs, and at the very bottom, deep in the station's core, the power reactor. "There," Ji-Yeon said, pointing at the reactor. "That is our way out." Taeho finished tying up the last soldier and walked over. He looked at the schematic and his face went pale. "Ji-Yeon, please tell me you are not thinking what I think you are thinking." "The Omega Protocol," Ji-Yeon said calmly. "Every deep space station has one. A self-destruct sequence powerful enough to collapse local spacetime. It creates a temporary black hole that pulls in everything within 100 kilometers. Including us," Taeho said. "Including the entire Dominion fleet." Yes, silence filled the room. Everyone was staring at Ji-Yeon. She could see the fear in their eyes. The Omega Protocol was not just a self-destruct. It was a weapon of last resort. A way to deny the enemy a strategic position at any cost. No one had ever used it before. No one had ever been desperate enough. Until now. "Captain," Dongwu spoke up. He was a short man with thick arms, an engineer who had spent 20 years keeping stations running. "The Omega Protocol will kill us too. There is no way to outrun a singularity. Not if we time it right." Ji-Yeon pointed at the schematic again. "Look, Docking Bay 4. There's a Dominion shuttle there. They used it to bring Vought aboard. It has shielded engines, designed to resist gravitational distortion. You want to steal their shuttle?" Sora asked. She was young, barely older than Yuna, but she had fire in her eyes. "And fly it through an exploding singularity? I want to ride the blast wave," Ji-Yeon said. "When the reactor explodes, there will be a few seconds before the singularity forms. During those seconds, the explosion will push outward. If we launch at exactly the right moment, the blast wave will throw us clear before the gravity well catches us." "That is insane," Taeho said flatly. "That is our only chance." More silence. Outside, the cutting torches hissed and screamed. The smell of melting metal grew stronger. Dongwu closed his eyes. He was running calculations in his head. Ji-Yeon knew he was the only one who could tell them if this was possible or just suicide with extra steps. Finally, he opened his eyes. She is right. Theoretically, it could work. We would have a 4-second window. Maybe 5 if we are lucky. 4 seconds. Taeho repeated. "To save our lives." "We have worked with less," Ji-Yeon said. She looked around at her crew. These 4 people had already proven their courage today. Taeho had charged an armed soldier with his hands tied. Dongwu had picked up a weapon and fought despite being an engineer, not a soldier. Sora and Yuna had kept their heads when everything fell apart. They were the best crew she had ever served with. I will not order any of you to do this, she said quietly. This is not a command. This is a choice. If you want to surrender to the Dominion, I will not stop you. But I am going to fight. I am going to make them remember that humanity does not go quietly into the dark. Taeho was the first to step forward. I already told you, old friend. I am not leaving you to die alone. Dongwu shrugged. I have spent my whole life keeping things running. Might as well go out with the biggest explosion I have ever made. Sora smiled grimly. My parents were killed in the Battle of Red Nebula. The Dominion owes me a debt. Time to collect. Yuna took a shaky breath. She was the youngest, the most scared. But she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. My grandmother always said I would do something important someday. I guess this is it. Ji Yeon felt tears prick her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Thank you. All of you. Now let us get to work. They moved fast. Yuna stayed at the console, preparing the Omega Protocol activation sequence. Dongwu helped her with the technical details. Taeho and Sora gathered weapons from the fallen soldiers. Ji Yeon walked over to Commander Vogue. He was still alive, though barely. The pen had damaged his neural connection, cutting him off from his fleet. His four eyes, three now, really watched her with burning hatred. You cannot escape, he rasped. My soldiers will cut through that door. My fleet will destroy you. You have accomplished nothing. Ji Yeon knelt beside him. Maybe, but I am about to send a message to your entire empire. A message that humanity is not afraid to die. A message that we will burn ourselves to ash before we kneel to you. She stood up and walked to the main console. She opened a channel to the Dominion fleet. She knew they could hear her, even if she could not hear them. This is Captain Park Ji-Yen of the United Earth Navy. Your commander is my prisoner. In 10 minutes, I will activate the Omega Protocol and destroy this station. The resulting singularity will pull in everything within 100 kilometers. That includes your entire fleet. She paused to let the words sink in. You have two choices. You can withdraw from this sector immediately and live, or you can stay and die with us. I do not care which you choose, but know this. If you stay, not one of your ships will survive. Not one of your soldiers will go home to tell the story. You will simply disappear, as if you never existed. She cut the transmission. The room was silent. Everyone was watching the view screen, waiting to see what the Dominion would do. For a long moment, nothing happened. The 40 warships held their position, black triangles against the stars. Then, slowly, the fleet began to move not away, closer. They are calling our bluff, Taeho said grimly. Jai Yan had expected this. The Dominion did not believe in retreat. They did not believe that any enemy would actually destroy themselves to avoid surrender. They had never met a species that would. Yuna, Ji-Yeon said, begin the countdown. Yuna's fingers trembled as she entered the activation codes. A loud alarm began to blare throughout the station. Red lights flashed. On every view screen, the same message appeared. Omega Protocol activated. Detonation in 10 minutes. On the view screen, the Dominion fleet froze. For the first time in 600 years of conquest, the Dominion faced an enemy who meant what they said. An enemy who would rather die than surrender. An enemy who had nothing left to lose. Ji-Yeon watched the ships. Her heart was pounding, but her face was calm. Come on, she whispered. Run. The seconds ticked by. 9 minutes. 8. 7. The cutting torches outside stopped. The soldiers on the other side of the blast door were listening to their commanders, waiting for orders. And on the fleet, Ji-Yeon knew officers were arguing about what to do. At 6 minutes. The first ship broke away, then another, then 10 more. The Dominion fleet scattered like frightened birds. their perfect formation breaking apart as 40 warships for the edge of the system. They were running. The unstoppable Dominion was running, but Jean did not stop the countdown. "Captain?" Una looked up in confusion. "They are retreating. Should I abort?" "No." Jean's voice was hard. "They will come back. They will bring more ships, more soldiers. Unless we give them a reason to stay away forever." She looked at the view screen one more time. Then she turned to her crew. "Everyone to Docking Bay 4. We have 5 minutes to steal a shuttle and fly through a singularity. Move." They moved. The corridors of Station Omega were chaos. Alarms screamed from every speaker. Red emergency lights painted the walls in blood-colored shadows. And everywhere, Dominion soldiers ran in confusion, their perfect discipline broken by panic. Jian led her small group through the madness. She moved fast, weapon raised, checking every corner before advancing. Behind her came Taiho, dragging the wounded Commander Vok with them. The Dominion commander could barely walk. The pen still stuck out of his eye, and blue blood had stained half his face. But Jian was not leaving him behind. He was their insurance. "Why are we bringing him?" Sora asked as they turned down another corridor. "He will slow us down, because the Dominion might try to stop us," Jian replied. "They will not fire on a shuttle if their commander is inside." It was a gamble. Everything about this plan was a gamble. But Jian had learned long ago that sometimes the only way to win was to bet everything on a single throw. They passed through a junction and nearly ran into a group of 5 Dominion soldiers. The soldiers were young, their eyes wide with fear. They raised their weapons, but they hesitated when they saw Vok. "Commander!" one of them shouted. "We need to evacuate you to the flagship." Vok tried to speak. The Jian pressed her weapon against his neck. "Tell them to drop their weapons. Tell them to let us pass." Vok's 3 remaining eyes blazed with hatred. For a moment, Jian thought he would refuse. He would rather die than help humans escape. But then something changed in his expression. Something that looked almost like curiosity. "Do as she says," he rasped out. The soldiers hesitated. They looked at each other, unsure. Their training told them to fight. Their commander told them to stand down. In the end, loyalty won. They dropped their weapons and stepped aside. Jian nodded to Taiho, and they kept moving. The countdown echoed through the station. Omega Protocol detonation in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Docking Bay 4 was still 2 levels below them. They had to move faster. "Dongwu," Jian said as they ran. "When we reach the shuttle, how long to get it powered up?" 30 seconds if nothing goes wrong," the engineer replied. He was breathing hard, sweat running down his face. 60 if something does. Make sure nothing goes wrong." They reached the stairs and started climbing down. Jian's legs burned. Her lungs ached. But she did not slow down. She could not slow down. 3 minutes. They reached the docking bay level. The corridor ahead was clear. Jian could see the bay doors at the end, huge metal slabs marked with Dominion symbols. Beyond those doors was their escape. Their only chance. They were halfway down the corridor when the doors behind them exploded. Jian spun around. A squad of Dominion soldiers poured through the smoking doorway, at least a dozen of them. They were elite troops, marked with special armor that shone like black glass. Someone had finally organized a response. "Go!" Jian shouted to her crew. "Get to the shuttle. I will hold them off." "No." Taiho tried to turn back, but Sora grabbed his arm. "She gave us an order." "Move." They ran. Jian stayed behind, weapon raised. She fired once, twice, 3 times. 2 soldiers fell. The others dove for cover and returned fire. Energy blasts scorched the air around Jian. One hit her shoulder, burning through her uniform and into her skin. She gritted her teeth against the pain and kept firing. 2 minutes. She was not going to make it. She knew that now. She had accepted it the moment she decided to stay behind. But if she could buy her crew just a few more seconds, then Vok did something unexpected. The Dominion commander had been lying on the ground where Tejo had dropped him. He was wounded, weak, barely able to move. But he was not helpless. He raised his hand and shouted something in his own language, a single word that echoed through the corridor. The soldiers stopped firing. Ji-Yan stared at Vok. "What did you say to them?" Vok pushed himself up to a sitting position. His face was twisted with pain, but his eyes were clear. "I told him to stand down. Why? Because I want to see what happens next." Vok's lips curled into something that might have been a smile. "You are the first enemy to ever wound me. The first to look me in the eyes and refuse to break. I am curious about you, about your species." Ji-Yan did not have time to think about what that meant. She grabbed Vok's arm and hauled him to his feet. "Then come with us. See what happens." She half-dragged, half-carried him down the corridor. The soldiers watched them go, but did not follow. Whatever Vok had said, they were obeying. 1 minute and 30 seconds. The docking bay doors were open. Ji-Yan stumbled through them and found herself in a vast chamber filled with ships. Most were small fighters and transport pods. But in the center, gleaming under the emergency lights, sat the Dominion shuttle that had brought Vok to the station dot. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Sleek black metal, shaped like a knife. Designed for speed, for stealth, for survival. Dongwu was already in the cockpit. Yuna sat beside him, her fingers flying over alien controls. Tejo and Sora stood at the shuttle's ramp, weapons ready. "Captain!" Tejo shouted when he saw her. "Get in. We're almost ready." Ji-Yan threw Vok up the ramp and jumped in after him. The ramp closed behind her with a hiss. 1 minute. "Everyone strap in!" Dongwu yelled. "This is going to be rough." Ji-Yan found a seat and strapped the restraints across her chest. Her wounded shoulder screamed in protest, but she ignored it. She had survived worse. She would survive this. The shuttle's engines roared to life. The whole ship vibrated as power flooded through its systems. Through the front view screen, Ji-Yan could see the bay doors beginning to close. The station's automatic systems were trying to seal everything for the detonation. "Dongwu! The doors! I see them!" The shuttle shot forward. The bay doors were closing fast, metal slabs sliding together like the jaws of a trap. They were not going to make it. They were going to be crushed. 45 seconds. Dongwu pushed the engines harder. The shuttle screamed through the narrowing gap. Metal scraped against metal. Sparks flew. And then they were through, shooting out into open space. Behind them, Station Omega hung in the darkness, its lights flickering, its alarm silent now. It looked small from out here. Fragile. 30 seconds. Head for the edge of the system. Ji-Yan ordered. "Maximum speed." "I'm already at maximum." Dongwu shouted back. 20 seconds. Ji-Yan watched the station through the view screen. She thought about all the years she had served there, all the people she had known, all the memories she was leaving behind. 10 seconds. The Dominion fleet was gone, scattered to the edges of the system. But Ji-Yan knew they were watching. Everyone was watching. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Station Omega exploded. The blast was blinding, a white flash that filled the view screen and turned night into day. The shuttle shook violently. Ji-Yan was thrown against her restraints. She heard someone screaming, maybe herself. And then, in the center of the explosion, something dark began to form. A point of absolute blackness that swallowed light itself. The singularity. The shuttle was caught in its pull, Ji Yun felt the ship tilting, sliding backward toward the hungry void. Dong Woo! I know! Hold on! The engineer pushed the engines past their limits. The shuttle screamed with the strain. For 3 endless seconds, they hung in the balance, caught between the blast wave pushing them forward and the singularity pulling them back. Then the blast wave won. The shuttle shot forward like a bullet from a gun, riding the edge of destruction. Behind them, the singularity collapsed in on itself, swallowing the wreckage of Station Omega, swallowing the empty space where the Dominion fleet had been, swallowing everything. And then it was gone. G-Y-E-O-N let out a breath she had not known she was holding. Around her, her crew was doing the same. They were alive. Against all odds, they were alive. Captain. Yuna's voice was shaking. We did it. We actually did it. Ji Yeon closed her eyes. Yes, we did. Behind her, Commander Valk laughed softly. Remarkable. T. Ji Yeon stood in the great hall of the United Earth Assembly, her hands clasped behind her back, her dress uniform freshly pressed. The hall was enormous, a dome of glass and steel that held representatives from every human colony in the galaxy. 2,000 people sat in tiered seats, all of them looking at her. She had never liked being the center of attention. She was a soldier, not a politician. But some duties could not be avoided. Captain Park Ji-yeon, the assembly speaker announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. You are here to give your account of the events at Station Omega. Please proceed. Ji-yeon took a deep breath. She looked out at the sea of faces. Some were friendly. Some were suspicious. Some were simply curious. She saw admirals in their decorated uniforms. She saw politicians in their expensive suits. She saw ordinary citizens who had come to hear her story. She began to speak. She told them about the Dominion fleet appearing from hyperspace. She told them about the evacuation, about the escape pods racing away with children and families. She told them about Commander Valk and his demands for surrender. She told them about the pen. When she reached that part, the hall went silent. Everyone leaned forward in their seats. They had all heard rumors. They had all seen the news reports. But now they were hearing it from her own lips. He offered me a pen to sign the surrender document, Ji-yeon said. And I used that pen to stab him in the eye. A murmur ran through the crowd. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else gasped. G-yeon continued. She told them about the fight in the command center. She told them about the Omega Protocol. She told them about the mad flight through the singularity, about riding the blast wave to safety. When she finished, the hall was silent again. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. Then another. Then 100. Then 1,000. The applause built until it was a roar, a wave of sound that washed over Ji-yeon and made her chest tight with emotion. She had not expected this. She had done what any captain would have done. She had protected her crew. She had fought for her people. It was her duty, nothing more. But looking out at the cheering crowd, she realized something. They did not see a captain doing her duty. They saw something else. Something they needed. Hope. The applause eventually died down. The speaker called for order. Questions were asked. Ji-yeon answered them as best she could. What happened to Commander Valk? One representative asked. He's in custody, Ji-yeon replied. He has been cooperative. I believe the experience changed something in him. He has been sharing information about Dominion tactics and weaknesses. Our intelligence officers say he has saved thousands of lives already. And your crew? The ones who survived with you? Ji-yeon smiled. Lieutenant Kim Tae-ho has been promoted to commander. He's already back in space, training new officers. Corporal Baek Dong-woo has been assigned to our engineering course, working on new ship designs based on Dominion technology. Ensign Choi Yuna has been accepted into the Naval Academy's advanced program, and pilot Han Sora has joined our fighter squadron. They are all doing well. More questions followed. About the Dominion, about future attacks, about what this meant for the war. Finally, a young journalist stood up. She was small, with short black hair and bright eyes. "Captain Park," she said. "One last question. What happened to the pen?" The hall fell silent. Everyone waited. Ji Yan reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small object and held it up so everyone could see. It was the silver pen, still stained with Dominion blood, its tip bent from the force of the impact. The light caught it, making it gleam. "I kept it," Ji Yan said. "As a reminder." "A reminder of what?" Ji Yan looked at the pen for a long moment. Then she looked up at the journalist, at the assembly, at all of humanity watching through the cameras broadcasting her words to every colony in the galaxy. "A reminder that weapons come in many forms," she said slowly. "A gun, a bomb, a spaceship, or a simple pen. The weapon does not matter. What matters is the will to use it. What matters is the courage to fight, even when fighting seems hopeless." She lowered the pen and slipped it back into her pocket. "The Dominion has conquered 600 species," she continued. "They are stronger than us. They have more ships, more soldiers, more technology. By every measure that matters, they should have won this war long ago. But they have not. Because we will not let them. Because every time they knock us down, we get back up. Every time they kill our soldiers, more volunteers step forward. Every time they destroy a station, we build 2 more." Her voice grew stronger. "They do not understand us. They think our hope is a weakness, something to be crushed. But hope is not a weakness. Hope is what keeps us fighting when logic says to surrender. Hope is what makes us dangerous. Because a species with nothing to lose and everything to fight for cannot be defeated. They can be killed. They can be destroyed. But they cannot be broken." The hall was completely silent. Every eye was fixed on Ji Yan. "The Dominion will come for us again," she said. "They will send more fleets, more commanders, more armies. And we will meet them. We will fight them. We will make them pay for every inch of space they try to take. And one day, when this war is over, they will remember Station Omega. They will remember the captain who stabbed their commander with a pen. And they will know that humanity will never surrender." She stepped back from the podium. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the assembly erupted. People rose to their feet, cheering, crying, embracing each other. The sound was overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotion that filled the great hall and spilled out into the streets beyond. G-Y. Eon stood in the middle of it all, her hand resting on the pen in her pocket. She thought about her crew. She thought about the people who had died so others could escape. She thought about all the battles still to come. The war was not over. It would not be over for a long time. But for the first time in 15 years, humanity was not just surviving. They were winning. Outside the assembly hall, news of her speech spread across the galaxy. Humans heard her words and stood a little straighter. They looked up at the stars and felt a little braver. They told their children the story of the captain, who defeated a commander with nothing but a pen and the will to fight, and across the vast darkness of space. In the cold halls of Dominion warships, generals and admirals watched the broadcast with growing unease. They had conquered 600 species. They had never failed. But now, for the first time, they faced an enemy they did not understand. An enemy that would not give up. An enemy that found weapons in the strangest places. An enemy called humanity. In her office that night, Ji Yan sat alone. The celebrations had ended. The assembly had adjourned. The reporters had gone home. Now there was only silence and starlight. She pulled out the pen and looked at it. Such a small thing. Such a simple thing. It had changed everything. Her communicator beeped. A message from Taiho. Saw your speech. You made us all proud. See you among the stars, old friend. Ji Yeon smiled. She set the pen on her desk and looked out the window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was planning their next move. Somewhere out there, her crew was preparing for the next battle. And somewhere, in the hearts of every human who had heard her words, a fire was burning. A fire that no enemy could extinguish. Hope. Ji Yeon turned off the lights and went to sleep. Tomorrow, the war would continue. But tonight, she had given her people something to believe in. And that was enough.